Welcome to the Orton-Gillingham podcast, a Brainspring production. Today, we'll speak with Olivia Whicker, co-author of Talewinds, Brainspring's new collection of decodable readers, about what makes decodable texts so effective, how decodables differ from other readers, and what teachers and parents should consider when purchasing a collection. Keep listening.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Orton-Gillingham podcast. This is Esther, and I'm here today to have a really great conversation with the co-author of Brainspring's new decodable readers. And so I'm here with Olivia Whicker, and she has agreed to come on and talk about her experience with writing our decodable readers and just to talk about how they're a little bit unique, and we'll have a fun conversation with her. We're also joined by Erin Akers, who's the Director of Curriculum Development at Brainspring, and she's also the managing editor of our Talewinds book series. And so thanks for coming on, you guys.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. So
thank you.
Yeah. So I think we'll start right off at the beginning with a little bit of vocabulary, just so that everybody's on the same page about readers. And so we hear a lot about decodable readers and controlled readers and leveled readers, all these different kinds of readers. And so I thought it would be a good idea just at the very beginning to kind of define those. When we talk about controlled readers, we're talking about text that's written with only very specific letters and sounds and words that have already been explicitly taught to students. So it's very controlled. Nothing unusual, nothing that has not been explicitly taught will be in these controlled readers. So they are very controlled. We also have readers that are called predictable readers. And those are books that use repeated phrases and patterns and are used with very early readers. And it really helps the early reader kind of anticipate what's going to be coming up next in the story. So, for example, we might have a page that says, "The cat sat in the sun." And there'll be a picture of a cat sitting in the sun. And then maybe the next page will say, "The dog sat in the sun," or "The man sat in the sun." And so it's a repeated phrase, and the pictures really tell what's going on in the story. And it's very predictable. So sometimes it appears that kids are reading stories, but they're really just looking at pictures and predicting what they think it says. And so it's really hard to know whether or not they're actually decoding or not. And so those are called predictable readers. We have leveled readers, which are written to reflect grade levels, basically. So very specific reading levels based on grade level vocabulary and sentence length and complexity and things like that. And so those you see a second grade reader or a third grade reader, and they're based on that. There are also readers that are called high-low readers, and these are for older students who have low reading levels, but they're older. And so these high-low readers will reflect some age-appropriate language and concepts that are more, appropriate for an older student. So those are some of the different kinds of readers. And we're here today to talk about decodable readers. And so decodable readers are a little bit different. They are controlled in a way, so they include concepts that students have learned explicitly, but they also include other concepts and other more interesting language that students may not necessarily be able to read on their own, but we include that language for interest levels. Erin, do you want to weigh in on that at all or add to that?
Sure, yeah. So decodable readers are specifically designed to reinforce skill learning for different grapheme phoneme correspondences that students have been introduced to and are learning. So they have a very specific purpose in reinforcing those skills, but they also can include a small number of words that students may not be able to sound out yet. They add interest to the story. They offer a little bit of challenge. As you mentioned, the readers are controlled, but not to the level of those controlled readers that you mentioned earlier. So they're enjoyable to read. They reinforce the skill learning, but their purpose really is to help the student focus on that specific skill and master that specific grapheme phoneme correspondence.
Mm-hmm. And so when we talk about decodable readers, who benefits from these? Erin or Olivia, either one can weigh in on this. Who will benefit from a decodable reader?
The first thing that comes to mind is young students who are just learning to read. They're learning these phonics concepts for the first time, and they need a lot of practice to get comfortable with them, get comfortable with seeing the patterns in the words. It also is good for anyone who struggles with reading for any reason past what would be like the target age, quote unquote, for decodable readers. I worked mostly with older students, like fifth grade and up all the way through 12th grade. And some of them struggled so much that they're not even really ready for a high-low reader. So decodable readers were a really good middle ground where it's not totally controlled for them, but, it's still a little bit fun, a little bit interesting for them to read.
Exactly. And we also know that decodable readers are really helpful for English language learners and even adults, right? Even adults who are working on their reading skills. So they're really great tools for any reader. So we're here really to talk today about the Talewinds series that is going to be released in September. This is the Brainspring set of decodable readers, and we're really super excited about it. And so we thought we're going to have Olivia on today. Olivia wrote a huge chunk of these books, mostly for the older, the year 3, 2, and 3 students. And so, and so Olivia comes to us with a unique perspective, and I think that her stories reflect that. And I think isn't that what a good story and a good author does, is takes experiences from their own life and writes about things that they're interested in and things that they know. And I really think that when you read these books, you'll see that come through with Olivia's stories. So Olivia, before you co-authored our Talewinds series, by the way, we have 2 other authors, Gail and Kim, who also worked on this series as well. They're not here with us today, but Olivia, when you worked on these, can you tell us about your experience with decodable readers that you may have had before? I mean, what made you interested in even wanting to write some decodable readers?
Sure. I worked at one of the Brainspring tutoring centers for quite a while. I was tutoring phonics first. I was tutoring structures. I was also tutoring reading comprehension, composition, and the like. A lot of my students who were working on comprehension actually had finished phonics first. They still struggled a little bit with reading. So we would spend a huge chunk of time reading decodable readers or high-low readers, while reinforcing the phonics skills that they learned in phonics first and their comprehension as well. And I have read front to back so many series of decodable readers. I have a pretty good sense of which ones are like really great and which ones are, serve their purpose, and that's that's about as far as it goes.
So tell us about the really ones that you think were really great. Like what did you think was really great about some of the decodable readers?
There was a really obscure series that I used to read all the time, and I think they stopped making them in the early 2000s. And just the plot lines that were in this series were so perilous and so dramatic.
Because we all like a little bit of peril, don't we?
Right.
Kids love drama.
Some of the plot points in these stories were like, the kid's school burns down and they have to deal with the aftermath.
Right.
A girl goes to a horse competition and she gets sabotaged by like an adult participant
Oh my
in the
gosh.
horse competition. All very like just crazy.
Yeah.
But it makes me think of, it's like the difference between like cartoons in the 90s and the 2000s versus now. I think cartoons are still great, but they're just a little bit different now.
Yeah, exactly. So those you kind of had those in the back of your mind, did you, when you were doing some writing for us, or did they influence what you wrote about at all?
A little bit. When we started writing Tailwinds and we were coming up with ideas, the one thing that I really wanted that stood out to me about the different series of decodables that I read, I always liked the ones where characters would reappear. I really think that makes the story so much more meaningful when you have these little, bite-sized stories. Decodables usually aren't very long.
Mm-hmm.
And you switch up the characters every time, there's no opportunity for you to know anything about them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But if you have 100-something books, like we have,
Mm-hmm.
and a little cast of characters, then,
Mm-hmm.
you get to see like, oh, well, this character was kind of stubborn in the last story, and now they're
Mm-hmm.
being stubborn again in this one. I could have predicted that one.
Mm-hmm. Great. Yeah. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about these characters in our stories series.
I did a lot of the work of coming up with the characters. We have a cast of like sixth graders, so whenever they're doing something more independently, usually it features the sixth graders, and then there's second graders.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're first graders. So a lot of the stories for the younger crowd, the kindergarten, first grade stories, the Hummingbird series feature those characters. Some of them are related to one another.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the first graders will have an older sibling who's in sixth grade.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them are very good friends and you see them together a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them haven't met before and they meet for the first time in a story.
Mm-hmm.
They have a lot of different family structures that are seen in the stories.
Mm-hmm.
There's all sorts of fun things about them. They have their own personalities. They'll act certain ways in stories.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, so the kids can really start to establish a relationship with these characters, which is also the hallmark of a really great story, is that if you feel connected, right? And so I think that these accomplish that for sure. Can you, Olivia, talk about your writing process? Because writing a decodable book is not as easy as you might think it is, because there's parameters, right? There are parameters that you have to stick to. So can you talk about how you created these stories to be so readable and so relatable, but they're very controlled in a way as well? So talk about how you did that.
I think starting each story, what I would always do is make a word list with all of the words featuring the particular phonics skill that I would be writing about. And I'd see if anything came to mind. The one that I think of is soft C and soft G. I knew it had to be something about food because there were words like digest, ginger, spice, stuff like that. And then I come up with the idea and I just start writing. But then as you write every word, every single word, you have to stop and think, does this only feature skills that they have previously learned? Yes or no?
Right.
I can't say how many times I would work on editing these with Erin, and a sentence would need to change for whatever reason, and she would suggest a word, and I'd have to be like, no.
Nope.
Yep.
It was like we were playing taboo. I'd
Yes.
say a word and she'd say, nope. Can't use that
Can't
yet.
do that yet.
That's
They
right.
haven't learned beginning blends yet. You can't use that. They
Yeah.
haven't learned this suffix yet. You can't use that.
That's the sign of a really good writer, when you can create a story that is fun to read and don't even realize that there are those parameters. And I've read every one of these stories myself as well. They're all amazing, and you don't get the sense that the language is stilted or awkward in any way. So it's really, really so well done. So that is definitely a challenge. I know, Olivia, you like to write other things as well. So this is, I'm sure, was quite a different experience for you. We touched on earlier when I was talking about predictable readers, how there are illustrations. In predictable readers, the illustrations really pretty much tell what is on that page. It doesn't leave much to the imagination. But tell us about the illustrations in Talewinds. And Erin, you can jump in on this one, and Olivia too as well.
Sure. So we kind of had a vision of what kind of feel we wanted the illustrations to have from the very beginning of the project. And we used the character development that Olivia had really done a lot of work on to help guide what we wanted the characters to look like. One of our biggest priorities was we did not want the illustrations to give away the text, as you mentioned in those predictable readers. We found an illustrator that really matched our style and design, and then we worked with her, providing kind of descriptions after laying out the books to make sure that the illustrations were interesting and provided some just beautiful pictures for the kids to connect with, and displayed these characters the way we wanted them to, but they are placed very carefully on the pages. Sometimes it's just an element, like a sign. In one of our stories about a beach, it might just be a shell. We were just very, very careful about the design to make sure that the illustrations were very beautiful, engaging, provided kids with that visual of the story that was so important, but very carefully placed so that the text is not given away by the pictures.
Yeah, and they are very pretty. I mean, they're they're colorful and they're pretty, and some of them are very, they really make you think. They're really beautiful. So the other thing about the series too, I think is really fun is that, and Olivia touched on this a little bit before about the connected characters and storylines, and so you really get to know these characters. But the other really cool thing about it is, especially for the stories for older students, they come in a series. So there's an A book and a B book. The A book will introduce a story and then kind of leave you with a little cliffhanger and wanting a little bit more, wanting to know what happens next. And then the B story comes in. And so these are really great little things that keep kids wanting to actually read. And Olivia, I mean, I think you were mentioning before about how because we have an A and a B book, you can kind of spread the practice out over the course of a week, right? I mean, so kind of talk about that a little bit, how these A and B books can be used.
Yeah, so on top of A usually leaving on kind of a cliffhanger and then B picking up after that, typically the B books are longer, just word count wise, and they might contain a few more longer words, 2 and 3 syllable words instead of just 1 and 2 syllable words. They might contain more words with suffixes. So they're just the tiniest bit more challenging than the A books. So the idea is if you're teaching a phonics skill over the span of a week or 2 weeks, you can read the A book towards the beginning of the week and then the B book towards the end of the week when they're a little bit more familiar with the phonics concepts. They can work through the longer words. They can work through the longer text a little bit more easily. Or if you're teaching a lesson over 2 weeks, A can be for the first week, B can be for the second week. It all just depends. It's all very flexible.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think it would be fun. We want to give our listeners a sense of what these stories can sound like and what they are. And so Olivia, go ahead and tell us what book you're reading and maybe, what the focus is on that for that book. And then go ahead and read it for us.
Sure. This one is book 17A. It is PH in addition to a couple silent letters. So KN to say n, MB to say WR to say r, and GN to say n. It's called Gnomes and Knights. It's about some of the 6th graders playing a tabletop role-playing game.
Okay. All right. Let's hear it.
Mabel's older brother, Philip, runs a games club at Fox Hill. Mabel likes to bring Owen and Cass to play board games and card games. As of late, they like a game called Gnomes and Knights most of all. Gnomes and Knights is a game where a bunch of friends pretend to be heroes and go on a quest together. One friend, called the Game Master, tells the story and says what happens. The players roll dice to see if their hero can do things, like fight a monster or climb a tall wall. It's all about playing as a team to have fun. Philip, the Game Master, has been leading Mabel, Cass, and Owen's heroes on a quest through Typhoon Cave. The heroes just drove off a pack of goblins. Now they stand at an old door. Philip begins to describe the door, but Cass blurts, "My hero's going to wrench open the knob." "No, mine's going to knock it down with her knee," Mabel giggles. "My hero will just knock," Owen says with a shrug. "Not so fast," Philip says. "The heroes try and try, but they cannot open the door. The door will open with a phrase. It looks like there is a hint on the door. Shall I read it?" Mabel, Cass, and Owen grin and nod. They are on the edge of their seats. Philip smirks, clears his throat, and reads from the book. "I wrote the words you love to read. I sign your name with speed and ease. I start each phrase both short and long. Without me, you would write all wrong. I'm in a graph, a book, a phone. You may write me into stone. I come in sets both big and small. You knew my song at 3 feet tall. What am I?"
And that's the end of the story.
That's the end of book A. So
Ooh, all right.
you'll have to see book B to see what the
Find
answer
out
to the
what
riddle is.
the riddle. I think that's amazing. And you would never read that story or hear that story and think that's so controlled. And the language was very natural and beautiful. And I love the little riddle. So there's a little preview of what many of these books are like. I mean, they're all engaging and they're all super, super fun. Thanks for reading that, Olivia.
You're welcome.
That was great. So I just want to kind of finish up here with maybe some advice that you could give to teachers or parents that are thinking about incorporating decodable readers into their phonics lessons or home lessons. Anything that you'd like to share about them?
Absolutely. So our Talewinds Decodable Reader series is specifically aligned to our Phonics First curriculum, but every book is very clearly labeled with the skill of focus for that story. So I think for anyone, whether using these at home or with Phonics First or with a different phonics program in a classroom or an intervention setting, making sure that you're following the sequence of grapheme phoneme correspondences that are outlined, that you're working through scope and sequence, and making sure that matches the skill focus for the week or whatever time frame you're working within. And then our readers are designed so that they're age appropriate. So for our kindergarten and year one readers, we have kind of limited sentences on the pages. We don't have wrapping text. You want to make sure that whatever readers you're using are developmentally appropriate for the age of the child that you're working with. And then, as we mentioned, our decodable readers do have limited words, and in ours we call them story words. I think that's important because that allows you to create stories that are interesting. The one that Olivia just read, for example, gives the kids a little bit of challenge as well. I did want to mention on our readers, on the back of each book, there's a QR code that is going to lead to a teacher guide page, a web page, landing page. And we have all kinds of really great strategies in different areas that go along with our readers in areas like comprehension and writing prompts, vocabulary building. So there's so much learning that can happen with a high quality decodable book. So I would encourage parents, teachers, tutors to just think outside the box. Their purpose is to build these phonics skills and strengthen them, but they also, because of their interest and readability, especially our decodables in particular, they're great for building comprehension. They're great for building vocabulary. They're great for connecting. You mentioned English language learners earlier. Great for intervention in small group, making sure you're individualizing instruction. So can't say enough about how excited we are and how valuable this type of reader is.
Yeah, it's super exciting. Well, gosh, thank you guys both for coming on the podcast. Thank you, Olivia, for all your hard work and for reading a story to us, and Aaron for just kind of spearheading this whole thing. We just want to remind everybody that the Talewinds series are available right now to pre-order. They are going to be released in September. And if you want to see a sample of them and what they look like, you can go to brainspring.com and go to our store, and you can see a sample of them and kind of get more information about them. I believe there's going to be a link in the show notes as well. Again, thank you so much for joining, and happy reading, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Orton-Gillingham podcast, a Brainspring production. For additional content, please subscribe to our newsletter, visit our website at brainspring.com, or follow us on social media. To submit questions or comments, please email us at podcast@brainspring.com. Your feedback is always welcome.